everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I want to go over this portion of the Chabad's website that talks about the Messiah. This portion of the website is called Moshiach 101. And I want to do this because I want to get a further understanding of what the Jews' belief is about the Messiah. Not that, you or I accept it, because we view Christ as being the Savior. He's the Messiah. He's come the first time in the meridian of time, and then he's going to come again during the second coming. But we know that the Jews are going to play a role in the second coming. Christ is going to come to them in Jerusalem. And so I think that there is value in looking at what they believe and how, in what way they are prepared or maybe not prepared for when the second coming happens. I think there's a lot of interesting things about it, and I think that there's value in understanding if there's like another group of people that you are not a part of. I think there's value in understanding them and their beliefs. If nothing else, but to foster unity or be able to empathize with them. But in this case, I tend to think that the Lord is working with them. He has been working with them all along. There's still the covenant people of the Lord. We know that we are too. We know that if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you've been baptized, you're part of Israel. Okay, they don't recognize us at this time, but they are currently a branch of the house of Israel, and they're family. So again, I think there's value in trying to understand what their beliefs are, and just kind of further our knowledge. Okay, so let's go through some of this now. If you're not familiar with the Chabad, okay, on Wikipedia, Chabad is one of the world's best-known Hasidic movements. So what's a Hasidic movement? Hasidic Judaism is a Jewish religious group that arose as a spiritual revival movement in the territory of contemporary Western Ukraine in the 18th century. So in the 1700s, okay? So a spiritual revival movement, and the Chabad is a movement that came out of that movement. Okay. I find the date here is interesting. The formation of the Chabad was in 1775. So this was just 1 year before the United States became a country. This was shortly before the time of Joseph Smith. So it's interesting that they were having this kind of revival at the time that our church was also coming on the scene, and there was the beginning of the restoration not long after this, right? So what they do, the Chabad, okay, they do outreach activities. They do, says Chabad institutions provide outreach to unaffiliated Jews. That's one of the things that they do. So essentially, it's like they're trying to continue the revival and continue getting those that are Jews to become Jewish again, like believing, not just Jewish by descent, but to participate and find their spirituality and their role, So this is it's a pretty authoritative website, I would say, when it comes to Judaism. These are Orthodox Jews, and let's just get into it, okay? Moshiach, in an introduction. We'll see what they have to say. I'll zoom in. Two of the most fundamental tenets of the Jewish faith, as listed by Maimonides among the 13 principles of the Jewish faith, are the belief in the ultimate redemption in a awaited era of world peace, prosperity, and wisdom, and the belief that the dead will be resurrected at that time. So this is interesting. We also believe in a resurrection and that it would happen at this time. What they are going to believe up until it happens is The first coming of Messiah we know is the second coming, and that the resurrection will happen at that time. And it's interesting that they have this concept of an era of world peace, prosperity, and wisdom. That's what we would call the millennium, right? The 1,000-year period. You could use these words to describe it: peace, prosperity, wisdom. The Messianic era will be ushered in by a Jewish leader generally referred to as the Moshiach, Messiah, Hebrew for the Anointed One, a righteous scion of King David. He will rebuild the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and gather the Jewish people from all corners of the earth and return them to the Promised Land. Okay. So we know that Christ, he descended through David, and that's what that was one of the things that okay. So it fulfilled prophecy, essentially, right? We know that Israel wasn't supposed to have kings. Like, that wasn't the Lord's plan for them. After they returned from Egypt, they entered the Holy Land, the Promised Land. They had judges, but the people wanted a political king to be like other nations. They were warned that that's not a good idea, but the Lord went ahead and gave them King Saul was the first one, and then David, and then Solomon, and then it went on. And then the country divided into the northern kingdom and southern kingdom. So Christ, in this sense, he is the literal, he would have been the literal king of Judaism, or of Israel, right? He had the right when he was born. That was his lineage. Okay, so, and of course, the temple that they're talking about here is the third temple. The first temple being built by Solomon, David's son, and then after it was destroyed by the Babylonians, it was rebuilt once they were allowed to return, and that was the second temple, or the temple at the time of Christ, the Herodian temple, it's sometimes called, and that got destroyed. So the first one was destroyed by the Babylonians, the second one was destroyed by the Romans, and now they're waiting to build the third temple. And I have a theory or a belief that it may already be built in the BYU Jerusalem Center. And there's people that would laugh at that because they picture the Jews building their own temple that would be just like the first two temples. But I think it very well could be that the millennial temple of Jerusalem may be the BYU Jerusalem Center. Whenever we're allowed to turn it into a temple, or if that happens at the time that Christ comes, I don't know. Anyway, I have a whole playlist about that, an entire playlist. So go check that out. There's reason to believe that. Okay, at that time, quote, delicacies will become commonplace like dirt, end quote. Is he talking about food? I'm not sure. All the nations will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. From Micah 4:3. Humankind will be preoccupied with only one pursuit, the study of godly wisdom. Quote, the earth shall be filled with knowledge of God as water covers the seabed. That's from Isaiah 11:9. Okay, so it's going to happen. That's what we believe. But why is this important today? Why is the coming of Moshiach so central to the Jewish belief system? Because the Torah teaches us that there is purpose to our world, and the Messianic era is the actualization of that idea. There are those who maintain that this crass physical world is merely a strategic challenge, one that the soul must battle and transcend en route to a heavenly paradise. According to this line of thinking, the physical and mundane has no intrinsic worth. It retains no value whatsoever once its function has been fully served. It is a means to a spiritual end. And, we do believe in our church that the earth is significant, that it's not just a place just to use. It itself is going to receive greater glory during the messianic, what they would call the messianic era, or the millennium. It's going to become a terrestrial world. It's going to receive its paradisiacal state back, the same as when there was the Garden of Eden. And then after that, it's going to become celestial, and it's going to be our inheritance forever. So I think that's something that we might have in common with them. I believe most other Christians, I don't know what they believe. I'm not sure that all of them believe that the earth is going to stick around forever. I don't know. You might have to correct me on that one. Okay, while Jewish belief also speaks of the soul's reward in the hereafter, earned through its toil in the course of life's journey, it sees the refinement of the physical and the infusion of holiness and purpose into the mundane as the paramount objective. It is the sanctification of the human body and the world at large that constitutes the very purpose of its creation. From the dawn of time, God envisioned for himself a dwelling place right here on planet Earth. Now, we would depart on that one. We know that God the Father, this is not his dwelling place. It will be for Christ. It will become a celestial world. So, anyway, and he put us here to fashion this home, to transform darkness into light. And and soon the day will come when God's glory will be revealed in this nether realm, and we will enjoy the fruits of our millennia-long work, the end product of our labor of love. The curtain will be ripped aside, and all flesh will perceive God. It will be the culmination of the master plan. The belief in Moshiach has sustained our nation throughout a 2,000-year exile, and that's talking about the time from when Rome destroyed Israel, and then there was a diaspora where they were scattered all over the earth, and just like the northern tribes, mostly into Europe. But anyway, fraught with pogroms, expulsions, and persecution, our ancestors' firm belief in a better time to come, and their trust that they would be resurrected to witness that day. And today, finally, we stand at the threshold of redemption. One more good deed by one more person may be all that's needed to seal the deal. So, it's their belief that by doing enough good works, it'll trigger this to happen. So you can see that there's a lot that we hold in common in our beliefs. There's similarities. There's definitely some differences. But it's interesting that right now, they view that right now we're at the threshold. They are in the same state of mind as most of Christianity is, and I think our church too. And I can say that for sure with our church, because I've put together the spreadsheet. We know for a fact that the general authorities are talking more and more about the second coming, and it's how imminent it is. This is a phenomenon within the last few years. I have quantified it. So, because there's always going to be those people that want to say like, hold on, let me pull it up. Google. No, I'm not going to pull it up. There's always going to be those people that say that, oh, well, everyone, during any point of history, they've always thought that the end was near. And that's kind of true. Yeah, there have been people that have made predictions and thought that they were in the end times. But no, really, right now, throughout all of Judaism, and in Christianity and in our church, it really is like at a fever pitch. We're all in sync. That's what I feel like. I feel like we're all in sync. Whether you're Jewish or a Latter-day Saint or a Christian from some church. Okay, so let's move on. I don't want to read why exile. Let's move on to awaiting Moshiach. Any individual who does not believe in the coming of Moshiach or does not await his arrival is rejecting not only the prophets, but the Torah and Moses too. For the Torah promises us regarding his arrival, Deuteronomy 33 through 5, God your God will bring back your exiles, and he will have mercy upon you. He will once again gather you. Even if your exiles are at the end of the heavens, God your God will bring you to the land which your forefathers possessed. That's from Maimonides. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. Maimonides, Laws of Kings 11:1. We await the coming of Moshiach because we look forward to finally having peace and reaping the rewards of our millennia-long exile toil. But the Messianic era isn't all about us and our benefit. It's primarily about a world set right, a world that will be a reflection of its creator, a world where the rights and wrongs of the Torah are self-evident truths. Until Moshiach comes, Judaism is simply a quote-unquote religion, seemingly relegated to its houses of worship that the tomes which preach its laws and ideologies and the lives of its faithful adherents. During the Messianic era, however, the truths of the Torah will be as self-evident as the laws of gravity and mathematics. Now, I agree. I think that will be the case during the millennium. Everyone that's living in telestial law will not be here. And I think we might be surprised by how much how many problems that class of people cause in the world by simply only having terrestrial and celestial law-abiding peoples. These things probably will become self-evident, I think that they are right now for a lot of people. Some people are kind of like in the fog, they're confused, like genuine good people, but when all there is just celestial and terrestrial people, and then Christ himself is here, I think it's going to be very obvious what is true and what is not. Okay, furthermore, as Maimonides mentions, it is not sufficient to merely believe in the coming of Moshiach. It is also of primary importance to await his arrival. For it is clear that one who does not yearn for Moshiach's arrival is demonstrating a lack of belief, too. It is conceivable for one to believe that such a magnificent era will indeed be arriving and not eagerly await that day. Yearning for the redemption is of such importance that according to the Talmud, Chabad 31a, one of the very first questions a soul is asked when facing the heavenly court is, quote, "Did you yearn for the salvation?" End quote. The Midrash, Yalkut Shimoni, Psalms 3:7-36, says that if the Jewish people have no merit other than their yearning for redemption, they are worthy of being redeemed for that alone. Okay, well that's okay. Heightened anticipation. Our nation has yearned for and awaited the redemption for nearly 2,000 years now. The anticipation, however, reached a fevered pitch in recent years. That is so okay. Fevered pitch in recent years, following the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of Righteous Memories announcement in the early 1990s, the era of redemption is upon us, and we must only increase in acts of goodness and kindness in order to be worthy to greet our Redeemer. So again, their belief is that the time is here, that it is like, I mean, he's talking about the early 1990s. So since that time, there's been this heightened fever pitch in waiting for the Mashiach. And they believe that by doing good acts, they'll be able to make it happen sooner. Okay, the Rebbe pointed out to various global The Rebbe pointed to various global phenomena that are clear indicators that the process of redemption has indeed started, and asked that we prepare ourselves for redemption by beginning to, quote-unquote, live with Moshiach, living a life that is dominated by the values that will characterize the Messianic era. One primary way this is accomplished is through studying about the Messianic era. Studying about it makes it a reality in our lives and allows us to live a life of redemption even in these last moments before we witness the complete and true redemption. Okay, so they're basically saying do more good works, learn everything that you can about Messiah, and live in such a way as though we were already in the Messianic era. And that's very similar to us. It's like we are. Christ commanded us to watch for the signs of the times, to watch, to study, and of course, to live the commandments. So it's similar. It's similar to what they're saying here. And I find it interesting. Okay, so that's belief and anticipation. Let's go back to Moshiach 101. Okay, the identity of Moshiach. Who is Moshiach? The Jewish Messiah. Now, of course, I want to reiterate, I'm not making a case for a Jewish Messiah. This is Christian Homestead. We accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah. But it's still interesting and valuable to see where their heads are at, to see how they're viewing the world. And we do know that there are going to be those that live through the war on Israel, the siege of Jerusalem, when Christ comes and saves them. There's going to be those that are there. They will accept Christ when he reveals who he is to them. But I still want to know, exactly how do they view it right now? It's interesting. Okay, the Messianic redemption will be ushered in by a person, a human leader, a descendant of Kings David and Solomon, who will reinstate the Davidic royal dynasty. Okay, so they're viewing this dynasty of kings, they view that as coming back. Now, we believe that Christ will come and he will be the king of the earth for the entire millennia. I don't know if they're saying here that they believe that Moshiach will, have children and the dynasty will continue. I don't know. According to tradition, Moshiach will be wiser than Solomon and a prophet around the level of Moses. I'm surprised that they would see. Here's like an insight here, because I don't know if they around the level. Like, wouldn't they think that Moshiach is going to be, the biggest prophet or that there is? Like, definitely. But they're saying here around the level of Moses. Ever since the destruction of the Holy Temple, in every generation there is an individual, a scion of the house of David, who has the potential to be the Moshiach. If at any moment the Jews are worthy of redemption, this person would be directed from above to assume the role of the Redeemer. Now, they're not talking about Redeemer in the sense that we would, like redemption from your own personal sins for your own personal salvation. And they're saying that, if I'm understanding this right, they're saying that throughout all of time, or at least ever since after Solomon, I don't know, there's always been a quote-unquote scion, it's spelled S-C-I-O-N, that could become Moshiach if the conditions were right. So that's an interesting concept, and that's something that we don't accept that, but that's interesting. So it means that you go back to the 1800s, there was some scion of the house of David that could have potentially become Moshiach, according to their belief. Okay, during the Messianic era, the Moshiach will serve a dual role. He will be a monarch, ruling over all of humanity with kindness and justice and upholding the law of Torah. 613 commandments for the Jews and 7 for the non-Jews. Now, the 7 for the non-Jews, that's referred to as the Noahide laws. And so what they're picturing here is when the Messiah comes, everything is going to be clear. Everything's going to be self-evident that Jewish law really is. There's not going to be like other. There's not going to. I think basically they don't believe there's going to be really other religions, but those that are not Jewish, that are not descended through Israel, I believe they call them the 70 nations. Okay, just like how we have the quorum of the 70, there's this concept of the 70 nations, and the Noahide laws are laws that everyone outside of the covenant or outside of the chosen people are supposed to abide by. In fact, they may have it here. Okay, the 7 Noahide laws are: do not profane God's oneness in any way, do not curse your creator, do not murder, do not eat a limb of a living animal, do not steal, harness and channel the human libido. 7, establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world. Okay, so that they believe that everyone else will be living this law. Okay, and okay, well, I'm not going to go further than that, but okay, so they'll be living like the higher law, the Torah, 613 commandments, and then everyone else would be living the Noahide laws, the 7 Noahide laws. So that's an obvious departure from what we believe. Now we believe, and I've done videos on this, that in the beginning of the millennium, there will be different religions in the beginning. But through the process of time, either people will become converted or they'll die. But at some point, every knee shall bow, every tongue confess that Christ is the Messiah. Right? So at some point, I don't know if it's going to be earlier or later, everyone will become part of the true church. And I've done a video on that. That's authoritative. That's just go look for that video. If I remember it, I'll put it in the description below. Okay. He will also be the ultimate teacher, the conduit for the deepest and most profound dimensions of the Torah, which will then be revealed by God. How are we to identify the Moshiach? Okay, that's a good question. If I was Jewish, I would want to know the answer to this question. Moshiach is not identified by his ability to perform earth-shattering miracles. In fact, he isn't required to perform any miracles at all, although the performance of miracles doesn't disqualify him either. The following are the criteria for identifying the Moshiach, as written by Maimonides. If we see a Jewish leader who, A, toils in the study of Torah and is meticulous about the observance of the mitzvot, mitzvot, what is that? Commandments. One of the Torah's 613 divine commandments, a good deed of religious precept according to Chassidut. The word mitzvah stems from the root savta, attachment. The mitzvah creating a bond between God who commands and man who performs. So I guess you could just call it the mitzvot, the commandments. So let's read that again. Toils in the study of Torah and is meticulous about the observance of the commandments. B, influences the Jews to follow the ways of the Torah. C, wages the battles of God. Such a person is the presumptive Moshiach. If the person succeeded in all these endeavors and then rebuilds the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and facilitates the ingathering of the Jews to the Holy Land to the land of Israel, then we are certain that he is the Moshiach. So they believe that the Moshiach is going to be the one that rebuilds the Holy Temple. I mean, that's like the clearest. It seems like that would be the clearest indicator that that person is the Moshiach. These other ones, like, how do you determine this? Like, how do you determine, oh, this person's the best, studier of the Torah and the best commandment keeper, and he's the best one that influences Jews to follow the ways of Torah and wages the battles of God. Does that mean like literal battles? I don't know. So, okay, well, whatever. That's their criteria. That's fine. Um, okay, the Messianic era. What will happen when Moshiach comes? Let's see. Paving the road to redemption. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the arrival of the great and awesome day of God, the prophet Malachi. Now, this is something unique to our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We know that Elijah has come. This is something that other Christians don't know, and the Jews don't know. Elijah has come. He came to the Kirtland Temple, and we have a date for that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was in the 1800s, and he came to Joseph Smith. And he came on the Feast of First Fruits. So during the Passover, what you would think of as the Passover week, you have on the first day, the first evening, you have the Passover meal or the Passover feast. That's like the first feast. And then on the first Sunday, so the first day after the Sabbath, during that time, that's the day of first fruits. That's the Feast of First Fruits. So you have those two feasts, and then the entire period, the entire week, is referred to as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you have three feasts that are all kind of part of the same thing. And Elijah came on the Feast of First Fruits. And the Feast of First Fruits is the day that Christ was resurrected. So anyway, we've done videos about that as well, so you can go check those out. Elijah will appear in order to herald the coming of Moshiach. True. He came, in our interpretation, he came to herald the second coming, right? The second coming, that has happened. Though there's much speculation as to precisely when he will appear, with his arrival, he will also serve several other important functions. Click here for more about Elijah's arrival, his functions, and why he was chosen for this special mission. We may have to look at that another time. Of course, their beliefs would most likely differ from what we believe, but I don't know exactly what they believe about that. They don't have the belief about the sealing power, right? He came and he restored the keys to restore sealings. But anyway, the prophet Ezekiel describes a climactic war, the battle of Gog and Magog, that will occur prior to the arrival of Moshiach. Okay, so they're looking for the same war that we are. This topic is shrouded in mystery. We are uncertain as to the identity of Gog and Magog, whether Gog and Magog are the names of nations or individuals, whether this battle will be a physical or spiritual battle, and even whether it has already occurred or not. According to tradition, the central personality in this war is Moshiach ben Yosef, Moshiach of the tribe of Joseph, who will be killed in this battle. Now, we don't really have that belief there. Now, I do know that there's other Latter-day Saints that have they've tried to associate this idea, Moshiach ben Yosef, with Joseph Smith, which I'm not prepared to say if those two things are the same. I do know that it has been said of Joseph Smith that aside from Christ himself, there hasn't been anybody else as instrumental in the salvation of mankind other than Joseph Smith. So there might be something to that. I don't know. But anyway, they're thinking that during the war of Gog and Magog, Moshiach ben Yosef, the son of Joseph, Messiah, son of Joseph, will be killed during that battle. Click here for more information about Gog and Magog and Moshiach ben Yosef. We'll do that some other time, maybe. Ingathering of the exiles and settling Israel. One of the most important aspects of the redemption is the promise of the ingathering of the exiles from the diaspora, with all Jews settling in their tribal portion of the Holy Land. We are assured that no Jew will be left behind, including the 10 quote-unquote lost tribes. Now, that's interesting. I would like to know their beliefs about that. They have accepted people, different groups from outside of Israel that claim to be from different tribes. One of which we covered recently. I have a playlist called The 10 Lost Tribes. And I think it was, what were they called? The Bene Menashe, or the Sons of Manasseh. That it's a group that was in India, and they accepted them. They made aliyah, or immigration, to Israel. And so I don't know if they officially consider them as the tribe of Manasseh. I keep saying over and over again throughout this channel, there's the Pashtuns in Afghanistan that are from different tribes, and I believe that they officially do believe that they're from the other tribes. So as to the settling of these different groups according to their tribal portion, I'd like to know the specifics of that, if they already recognize different tribes. But anyway, the Holy Temple, which was destroyed by the Romans, will be rebuilt in Jerusalem, becoming the central focus of all humanity, as Isaiah says, quote, "My home will be considered a house of prayer for all the nations," end quote. Total immersion in godly wisdom. The Messianic era will be one of tremendous prosperity. Quote, "Delicacies will be commonplace like dust," end quote. Now, if this is talking about food, I think that's right. In the sense that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve didn't have to toil; they didn't have to work for their to sustain themselves. Everything was given to them. They were able to freely eat from all the trees, and it was only after they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden that they had to start, working by the sweat of their brow in order to survive. So, and I don't know, but it seems, because this is my line of thought, since the millennium, the earth is going to return to its paradisiacal glory. Maybe that'll be the case. We're not going to have to work anymore to eat, which is a really big deal, because if you understand civilization, the thing that makes civilization possible is farming and agriculture. Because if you don't have that, then you have to rely on hunting and gathering, and you can't settle in a certain place. You have to wander. You're nomads. So that's one obstacle to civilization. But a second one is that with farming and agriculture, you produce per worker, per farmer, you produce more food than you consume. Therefore, it frees up labor, and people are able to stop farming, stop working literally to eat, and they can start going off into other occupations, whether it's mining or law or military or artisans and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is that in the millennium, if we don't have to work anymore for food, more people, that's going to obviously impact the economy. Okay. If you think about the world today, everyone who is a farmer may no longer have a job. They're going to be freed up to do other things. So the world during the millennium could be, well, it's guaranteed to be drastically different from how we're living right now. Will there still be people that work with food? Yeah, maybe, because maybe there's still going to be a demand for different meals or desserts. But as far as actually growing food, that may be a thing of the past. There may be gathering of food, but not wandering from place to place. So I don't know. I'm getting too far off topic, but it's interesting. Okay, furthermore, While our present-day knowledge of God is limited to intellectual perception, when Moshiach will teach about God, we will actually see what we are studying. Resumption of suspended mitzvot, or commandments, suspended commandments. The mitzvot we do today pale in comparison to those we will perform when we will be returned to the Holy Land. And aside from the greater quality of the mitzvot we will perform then, quantitatively too, we then will finally be capable of performing so many mitzvot, or so many commandments, which we are unable to do today. Also, with the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, we will resume the temple service and all the mitzvot, or commandments, that it entails. Now, that may be true with us as well, because certainly there's going to be more things that are revealed during the millennium, and there could be more commandments, different operating procedures in the church, higher commandments that we're not aware of right now. So I feel like this could be a shared belief. Okay. A miraculous era. Moshiach will usher in an era of peace and prosperity, which will benefit all mankind. The prophets depicts the Messianic era as a miraculous one, and the Midrash and Talmud are replete with statements regarding fantastic miracles that will be commonplace during the Messianic era. Whether these prophecies are literal or allegoric is the subject of debate amongst the Jewish philosophers. Resurrection of the dead. It says, okay, this is the 13th principle of faith. It's interesting that they have 13 principles of faith and we have the 13 articles of faith. Okay, but it says, I believe with perfect faith that the dead will be brought back to life when God wills it to happen. Let's look at their 13 principles of faith. 13 principles of faith. Jewish. Okay, here on the Chabad. Okay, here's their 13 principles of faith. 1. Belief in the existence of the Creator, who is perfect in every manner of existence and is the primary cause of all that exists. 2. The belief in God's absolute and unparalleled unity. 3. The belief in God's non-corporeality, so not having a body, nor that he will be affected by any physical occurrences such as movement or rest or dwelling. 4. The belief in God's eternity. 5. The imperative to worship God exclusively and no foreign false gods. 6. The belief that God communicates with man through prophecy. 7. The belief in the primacy of the prophecy of Moses, our teacher. 8. The belief in the divine origin of the Torah. 9. The belief in the immutability of the Torah. 10. The belief in God's omniscience and providence. 11. The belief in divine reward in retribution. 12. The belief in the arrival of the Messiah in the Messianic era. 13. The belief in the resurrection of the dead. So, not all these really fit with ours, but there is a lot of similarity at the same time. So, with our beliefs, not talking about the articles of faith, but just our beliefs in general. So, okay, that's interesting. Okay, the resurrection of the dead is an era that will last for all eternity. It is the second and final stage of the Messianic era. Oh, it's the second stage? It will happen 40 years after the advent of the Messianic era. Oh. Now, this is something where we depart, because when Christ comes, we know that it's going to happen at the beginning, like not 40 years later, but like at the beginning. Click for more precise timeline and more about the resurrection process. Okay, every Jewish soul that ever lived will be resurrected in the very body in which it lived and died. And in the case of reincarnated souls, all the bodies will be resurrected. So they believe what? So they believe in reincarnation? I did not know that. The body and soul are partners in all good deeds performed. They must both be rewarded accordingly. The resurrection era will be a period that will be characterized by radical changes in nature, with miracles becoming the daily norm. We will then be treated to a reward that can only be viewed as a gift from above, for its greatness is such that finite human efforts could never earn such bounty. Now, it does say here, every Jewish soul that ever lived will be resurrected. So are they saying that non-Jews will not be resurrected? Because that would be a departure from what we believe, that all mankind will be resurrected. So that's interesting. And then the very last thing here is, let's make it happen. Join the effort. Maimonides writes that we should view the world as being equally balanced with positive and negative deeds. Any one deed can help tip the global scale and bring the redemption. We must jump at every mitzvah opportunity, or commandment opportunity, right? Because mitzvah and mitzvot, I think that's like the same. For any mitzvah can be the one that will be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back and brings the messianic era. Add your mitzvah to the scale. Click here to learn about certain mitzvot whose observance has a special effect on hastening the redemption, and here to learn about the special role that women have in bringing the redemption. Now, that's interesting right there too. I don't know I'm not going to do it now, but them believing that women have a special role, that would be an interesting correspondence with our church, because in the Sisters in Zion talk by President Eyring, he talked about how women have a special role to play in the lead up to the second coming. So if they also have some kind of special role for women, that would be a similarity to us. Okay, so that's it. I know this was long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Now we have a better understanding of the way that they view the Messiah, what they expect the Messianic era to be, which, these things correspond with our second coming and the millennium, right? So there's a disconnect in the way that they interpret who Messiah is, obviously. That's like the big difference between Judaism and Christianity. But at the same time, even with it being so different in different ways, excuse me, their minds are still prepared. So if you're a Jew right now and you're someone that's going to live into the millennium, it's not going to be, with the exception of the true identity of Christ, it's not probably going to be too big of a shock to you. It's going to be probably pretty similar to how you expected, just with the revelation that Jesus Christ is the Redeemer and that he's the Messiah. And even that may not be too much of a shock to you. Like it might, I guess it depends on how tightly you cling on to your beliefs. But, all Jews are familiar with the idea of Jesus Christ, right? And they know what we believe. They know that we believe that he was the Messiah. So will it really be too big of a shock? I don't know. Yeah, that's probably going to be up to every individual. But some may be like, well, okay, yeah, with as many Christians as there were throughout history, maybe this isn't so surprising after all. So I guess it just depends. But this is all very, very interesting stuff. It's interesting that they are essentially in a state of alert, a state of heightened, expectancy for Messiah. In their own way, I think they are being prepared for the second coming and for what happens. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have additional information, any additional thoughts. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video if you liked it. Make sure to share it with anyone that wants to know more about Judaism and how some of it may be similar to our own beliefs. And I'll talk to you guys later.